GNX.
It is a GNX.
He brought some muscle. GT350R Heritage.
Love it, yes.
Yeah. I am curious as to why the paint is so thick on this particular example. Guess what? They don't make them anymore. Take a look under there and see what's going on. 63,000 miles is a shitload of miles for a GNX. We have a difference of opinion. I don't think it's worth $150,000.
I think Colin's a little light on this car.
I hope you're satisfied with the result. Randy?
Colin.
How you doing?
Good, how are you?
All right, good to see you.
Good to see you too.
GNX.
It is a GNX.
He brought some muscle.
I brought a little American muscle here.
So Randy, badass GNX. They made 547 of them. You brought the car in to allow me to do an appraisal. If it's okay with you, we're gonna usher you off into a soundproof area. I'll play with the car a little bit, and I'll bring you back out, and I'll tell you what I think of it, and we can see if we agree or not.
Careful, it bites.
Yeah, I'll take your word for it. So Randy's left me alone with his 1987 Grand National GNX. And for those of you that don't know what a GNX exactly is, it is a Grand National that was modified for Buick by ASC to be a higher performance version. The conversion included these 16-inch wheels, fender flares on all four wheel openings, vents in both front fenders, debadged exterior, and more importantly, some stuff to make it go faster too. The turbocharger had a ceramic impeller, which was heady stuff in 1987. It also had some revised intercooler piping, a higher performance computer, and a bunch of other little tweaks. Under the car, it had additional body mounting to make the chassis stiffer. It also had a torque arm to locate the rear axle better and harness the extra power. On the inside, the GNX had a completely different dash cluster with analog gauges instead of the Grand National's digital cluster. All in all, the Grand National GNX was a very special limited production car. They made 547 of them versus 20-some thousand regular Grand Nationals. So I did my walk around of Randy's GNX. The car, as you can see, is beautiful, but I did take out my handy little paint gauge and measure the paint thickness on the car. Not only do you want to make sure any late model car has original paint or to figure out how many times it's been repainted, these cars when they were new had horrible paint. Most of these have been redone at this point. That's why I whipped this baby out to see exactly what Randy's car has been through in its years. A factory paint job on these cars should have been between 2.5 to 4.5 mils of thickness. For example, right here on the hood, it's 30.5, obviously a little thick. So I went around and did a sampling when I did my inspection, and at various points throughout the car, it's just as thick. Right here, for example, it's reading infinity. So the car has a lot of paint on it. There's 19.5 on the roof, 19 there, 22.5 back here. It's not uncommon to have a repainted one of these. However, I am curious as to why the paint is so thick on this particular example. Another thing I noticed was in the driver's door jamb, this car should have a federal certification label with the serial number of the car and build date and all that kind of stuff. This has been repainted and the decals are gone. You can buy new certification labels, and that's probably would be a good addition for Randy to have a new one made just so it looked correct. Before I get to the interior, the heart of the GNX is obviously under the hood, so let's take a look under there and see what's going on. All right, so obviously a big part of the GNX's appeal is the fact that ASC McLaren modified these engines to make the GNX the fastest production car at the time. The other thing that happened with GNXs is people couldn't keep their hands off of them. Just like the Grand National, people liked modifying these things to make them faster. Unfortunately, that also detracts from the collectability today. For example, the original turbo on a GNX was special for the GNX. It was a Garrett T3 with a ceramic impeller. It also had the special special heat shield on it. On Randy's car, the heat shield remains, but the turbo has been changed. The intercooler piping is changed, the air intake is different, the factory air box is gone. I can see it has a little piggyback computer here, so clearly it has an upgraded computer chip. I see a fuel pressure gauge, a different throttle body. It basically has all the hot rodding tricks thrown at it. And while that is awesome if you're gonna drive it, it doesn't help the value. Remember, they made 547 of these cars in 1987. It's not 1987 anymore. It's 2022, and you just can't run down to the Buick store and buy this stuff over the counter. Moving to the inside of Randy's GNX, again, here's this special GNX only gauge cluster. It has the original radio, the climate controls are all there, the seats are original and excellent condition. The biggest problem on the inside that I see are these numbers right here, 63810. That's the mileage. 63,000 miles is a shitload of miles for a GNX. Not a lot of people drove these things. So we've talked about how the engine is modified, and we've talked about how the car gets driven. Let's hear how it sounds. You can tell it has a big turbo on it. The response is a little down. I haven't driven it, but I assume when you're driving it, it's more of a sledgehammer than it was originally. It probably waits to get on boost and then really knocks you back in the seat. From a thrill perspective, I'm sure this provides a lot more than something that was stock. From a collectability perspective though, again, stock is where it's at. So in the trunk, we have some spare door panels for it, GNX fender cover, ASC license plate. When this car was new, the GNX came with some cool 1980s stuff like a GNX satin jacket. If the jacket's missing today, that's a big deduction in price. They came with an owner's kit, a GNX owner's kit. Again, this was a $29,000 car in 1987, so the owners wanted a little something extra to make them feel good about buying a modified Buick Regal. The other thing that you can notice in the trunk is this GM build sticker. It shows you all the options the car was built with. Now here's an interesting fact. This will not denote that's a GNX because it was converted to a GNX after this part was done at GM. To figure out if it's really a GNX, you can go online to the GNX registry and look the car's serial number up and the GNX number up. That GNX number is also on the dash plaque. Be forewarned, like everything else, people have doctored up and made bogus ones. So even though it has a GNX dash plaque and the gauge cluster and all the visual cues, don't be fooled. Look it up, make sure it's really a GNX. So after walking around and assessing Randy's GNX, there are things that detract from its condition rating. Using the Hagerty Valuation Tools condition guide, I would call this a number 3 condition car. Why? Because of the paintwork that we found, the tinted windows, the general wear and tear on the interior of 60-some thousand miles. The engine compartment is clearly showing the modifications in use. So in general, it's clearly no wrapper car, and it's not a concourse level car or a perfect show car. So now that I've checked the car out, gone over all the details, my appraisal is complete in my head. I know what I think the car is worth. It's time to call Randy back in and give him the news that he may or may not be happy with. All right, Randy, come on over.
Oh boy.
Before we talk about what I think, I want to know what you think. What do you think it's worth?
I think it's a $150,000 car. Every one I've seen lately, even though it's got less miles, has been between $200,000 and $300,000. This one's been driven, it could be enjoyed, it's modified, it's a blast, and it's real.
Here's where I have the issue. We've seen the big numbers on wrapper cars and low mileage cars, 500 mile cars, 1,800 mile cars, a couple 100-mile car, yeah, they're $200,000 to $300,000. Where we have a difference of opinion is, I don't think it's worth $150,000.
Oh, so you think it's worth more?
I think it's worth more than it used to be. I think it's worth around $100,000. The number that matters to the buyer today is what's on the odometer.
I've seen people just do stupid things with checkbooks when they're around these cars. To me, it's priceless.
I appreciate you bringing her out.
Absolutely,
Thanks so
anytime.
much.
Thank
and
you.
Thanks for not hitting me.
Yet.
Duly noted.
I think Colin's a little light on this car. Apparently he's not a Buick guy, so I think it's a good example, and if I did decide to sell it, I'm fairly certain somebody would pay up for it.
Hey, Colin, here's your $50,000 worth of value.
Hey, Jake.
Colin, how's it going? Good to see
Good.
you.
GT350R Heritage.
Love it. Yes.
Yeah. I appreciate you bringing it out.
Thank you, yeah.
And you know kind of the general premise of why we're here. So you brought your cool car, and I'm gonna take a look at it and do an appraisal, which seems kind of weird on a new car, but we've done weirder things.
Awesome, love it.
Okay, well, we'll come get you in a little bit.
I'm walking.
So I've done my inspection of Jake's 2020 GT350R Heritage Edition. This is a brand new car. It has 700 miles on it. He bought it new. There's nothing at all wrong with the car. It's perfect. Let's talk about the real matter at hand here. I mentioned it was a 350R. What is a 350R? Well, it is the higher performance version of Ford's GT350 that's been produced since 2015. 2015 was a special year. They made 37 R models and 100 non-R models for Ford VIPs and executives in 2015. The first real production year for this S550 chassis GT350 was 2016. You could get the regular GT350 or the 350R. Guess what? You can no longer go to a Ford dealership and buy one of these. They don't make them anymore. They made them from 2016 through 2020. To commemorate the last model year and the anniversary of the Shelby Mustang, they built these, the Heritage Edition cars. The Heritage Edition cars were painted Wimbledon white, the same as a 1965 Shelby Mustang. They added the Lama stripes and the rocker panel stripes, again, much like the 65 GT350. What makes these cars special beyond the Heritage thing? Well, number one, it's gonna be the last stick-shift high-performance Mustang we ever see. They have a flat plane crank engine that makes 526 horsepower, revs to 8,200 RPM. They made roughly 800 of these Heritage Edition cars for 2020. 280 of them were R models. This is obviously one of the 280. So let me point out a few things quickly that make the GT350R an R. They have a bigger front splitter on them. On the non-Heritage cars, the Shelby badge here and on the trunk lid are red instead of black. On the Heritage cars though, of course, they're blue, so there's a little difference there. These are carbon fiber wheels made by Carbon Revolution for Ford. This is the bigger 350R rear spoiler. This creates a lot more downforce, which balances out that bigger front splitter. So under the hood, there's nothing special about a GT350R or a Heritage Edition car versus a regular GT350. It has all the same stuff, the carbon composite core support, the open air cleaner element, the chassis bracing, and the special 5.2 liter flat plane crank. This is really the magic of these cars, is this engine with the 6-speed transmission behind it. One neat thing about what Ford does with their special high performance cars is they let the builder that hand assembled the engine sign the engine plate and attach it to it, so you know the builder's name. They've got guys hand assembling these high performance engines, putting their heart and soul into them and signing their name to it. When you have to put your name on something, you usually do a little bit better job, so that's kind of cool. Now on the inside, obviously, there's a lot of regular old Mustang. The magic, again, in the cars is in the drivetrain and the chassis and the tuning. Ford didn't waste a lot of money making a bespoke interior for the GT350s. They do have a really nice steering wheel, really nice shifter, nice Recaro seats that were an option. But again, what you paid for was under the skin and not necessarily in here. It does have some cool features though, and one of those I'm gonna start up to show you. As you can see, the car started up. It's nice and quiet. You could sneak out of the house if you had to. It does have an exhaust mode. So I can flick a toggle switch here in the center console, and that's normal mode. And then we go to sport mode. The other thing it has on the GT350 is it has adjustable drive mode. It has a normal mode, a sport mode, a track mode, a wet mode. These all works together with the electric power steering, the stability control, the traction control. Ford really had these dialed in. I've done my appraisal, I've looked the car over, and there's no question as to its condition rating. On the Hagerty valuation tools scale, this is a number 1. It's a brand new car. I don't think it's ever been wet. It has 700 miles on it, but it has 700 miles on it at the hands of its carrying original owner. The original sticker price was around $80,000 for a Heritage Edition R model. As you might have noticed, we are in a global pandemic, and there are supply chain issues with everything. Yes, we can finally get hand sanitizer sanitizer again, and we can get toilet paper. What we can't get, though, are the damn computer chips that run these kind of complex cars. So now we have this combination of supply chain issues and an instant collectible, low production, high performance car. I've done my appraisal. I know what this car is worth. Now we're gonna get Jake back in the room and see what he thinks it's worth, and then I'm gonna tell him what I know it's worth.
Well, how'd it go?
It went well. Obviously, I didn't find anything wrong, long story short. But let me ask you this. So you bought the car new. Were you lucky enough to pay sticker price for it?
I wasn't, but just a little
Okay.
over that.
So you're in it for mid-80s.
Yep.
Let me ask you this. What do you think it's worth right now?
Well, I hope it's what I paid for it, but I'd say maybe the 90s, maybe.
We always expect you buy something new, it's worth a little less after it's used.
Right.
With that said, as you know, they don't make these anymore. This is kind of like one of the last great Mustangs, stick shift, big horsepower, and people are finally starting to figure this out. I think today that your car is worth $150,000 the way it sits.
Wow, okay.
You made a really wise decision.
Yeah, I
And-
guess so.
I hope you're satisfied with the result.
Definitely, no, it's my pleasure to bring it over. I love this car, and it sounds like I'll be holding on to it for a little while.
Well, thanks again.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. That's awesome. It's more than I expected for sure. You know, I knew that these cars they're no longer producing them, so it was curious to me maybe what it would be worth. You know, I've got my original '91 Mustang, so I'll just hold on to this one as well. So.